Welcome to the It's All About Missions podcast with Brady Van Winkle, as we endeavor to talk about missions and the need for the gospel all around the world. We hope we can help you find your place in world evangelism. And for questions or for more information, please check out it'sallaboutmissions.com. And now we hope you enjoy the show. Hello, and thank you for joining us on this week's episode of It's All About Missions, Country Spotlight. And this week we're going to be looking at a Middle Eastern country that most people have probably heard about recently, if not for the past several years. We're going to be looking at the Asian country, it's considered Asia, but Middle Eastern country of Syria. And Syria is a country with a hard to understand population right now, because if you know, since about 2011, they've been in turmoil and in war, and all kinds of things have been going on there, from ISIS to different people, different groups fighting there, and it's a pretty big mess there in Syria. And so they say the population of Syria before lots of people left, the refugees, was closer to 22, 23 million. They say right now there's around 17 million, give or take. And there's around 6.5 to 7 million refugees from Syria that are in many different countries around the world. The largest being the country of Turkey, hosting almost 4 million Syrian refugees, and they're spread out. They want to get back to their homes, but it's been in a war-torn mess. I just want to give some facts. We could talk a little bit more about what's been going on in Turkey or in Syria and how we can better pray for it. But so we know the population. The capital city is Damascus. The largest city is said to be Aleppo, with about 3 million people in it, and then Damascus having about 2.5 million, give or take there. The language that they speak is Arabic, and those are the two largest cities there, and then that's the main language. And it's been in turmoil for many, many years, since 2011. It's been pretty rough there between ISIS, between the local government, between the different rebel fighters, the different factions that are fighting, and things along the lines there. And there's been a lot, and you've probably heard Syria in the news for the past 6 to 10 years, really, about all the things that have been going on in the country, and it's just horrible to think about what's going on to these people. But you know, what's sad about it is these people it's a majority Muslim country. Basically, about 90% of the country would be considered Muslim, and they're pretty devout. A lot of them are. Some of them aren't as devout, but I know here in Turkey we've seen quite a few of them, and you could tell this because they dress a little bit more devout, a little bit more. You could just know that they're from Syria just by the way they dress and things along those lines. But guess what? That doesn't mean they don't need help. Yes, they need financial help, but you know what? They need more than financial help, more than a home, more than a country rebuilt. They need the gospel, because right now they're lost and they're on their way to hell. And we need to pray that we can see Syria reach the gospel in this generation. We need to be seeing all that we can do. But God has opened a great door, because in the past, and even still now, it would be near impossible to go to the country of Syria. It'd be very difficult. It'd be very dangerous to go there, just because of the people, just because of the instability and the unrest that's in the country. But there's almost 7 million refugees spread around the world in different countries and different places, and they're there seeking asylum. They're there for short periods of time, but guess what? We can reach those people with the gospel where they are. If they're there in the United States of America, well, there's refugees that are there. Guess what? You can reach them. They're in Canada. They're all over the place. But you know, one of the key places I think you could see Syrian refugees reach the gospel is here in the country of Turkey. I've seen many of them, met many of them, and they're just normal people. They just want to go back to their country, but they just can't right now, because either their homes were destroyed or where they used to live, that was just war-torn. They just did not want to be there. But you know what? They're spread all around the world. We have opportunities to see them reach with the gospel where they are. And as God opens the door for Syrians to go back to their country, guess what? If we can reach them with the gospel where they are, they'll go back as Christians. They can go back and they can plant churches. They can train men. And we can see Syria reach with the gospel. So yes, we need to pray for those people that are suffering, that are hurting, that pray for the peace to come there in Syria, pray for all the atrocities to stop. But we need to pray that the gospel can go forward there, because guess what? The gospel will change lives. The gospel will change the situation in Syria. The gospel went forward and people got saved. All the fighting and stuff typically would stop if everyone got saved in the country of Syria. But we need to pray that Syria can reach the gospel. We need to pray that God open doors here in Turkey and in the United Kingdom and in Europe and many of these other Middle Eastern countries. They've accepted some of these Syrian refugees, and there's opportunities and open doors to see Syrians reach the gospel. And let's just pray, and let's be doing all that we can to see Syria reach the gospel in this generation. Let's pray that God not only will use the doors he's already opened, but he'll open up the doors to Syria, that people can take the gospel, that they can plant churches, that they can train men, and that we can see Syria reach the gospel in this generation. Let's just pray. First of all, let's pray for those Christians that are still in Syria. Many of them are in harm's way and difficulty. Sometimes they're in danger. And let's just pray that they'll be bold.
For those pastors that might be there, that they'll be willing to preach the gospel and they'll lead their people. For those that might be even laboring or going in and out of Syria and laboring to share the gospel, planting churches and things along those lines. Hey, let's pray that God can use them and God will open the doors for them to keep seeing people saved and reach with the gospel. But sure, let's pray for those that are lost. That this situation is a rough situation and that it'll be used to open their eyes and they'll realize that Islam is not the answer, that there's no answer in Allah, but that they'll hear the gospel and they'll come to Christ and that we can see Syria reach with the gospel in this generation. As I say each and every week, hey, let's not only be praying that we can see not only Syria reach with the gospel, we need to be praying that the world can reach with the gospel in this generation, but that also includes endeavoring and doing all that we can. That means praying, that means giving, that means going, that means discipling, that means sharing the gospel with people. And my question to you is, what are you doing to help see the world reached with the gospel in this generation?
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of It's All About Missions. And we'd like to ask you to do a couple things for us. The first thing I ask you to do is, if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe so you can stay up to date when all of our new episodes drop. And that way, as a new episode comes, you'll get a notification that lets you know, hey, we've got a new episode of It's All About Missions. Second thing I ask you to do, if you haven't yet, please make sure to leave us a review. These reviews are very vital and they help us out and they help other people to see us in the podcast player of choice. They'll see us and see those reviews and say, hey, I want to check out this podcast. And lastly, one other thing I'd like you to do, why don't you share us with a friend, a family member, somebody you know, and say, hey, why don't you go over and check out It's All About Missions. That'll help us grow our audience, help people to know more about It's All About Missions, and guess what? It'll help more people get involved in reaching the world with the gospel. I want to challenge you to know that the Bible, it's all about missions. And as a Christian, your life should be all about missions. And what are you going to do to impact the world with the gospel in this generation?